once a month some interesting information. And today is maybe the most interesting information because you'll hear about something that at the moment now, it may not be real, but it's going to be real in the near future. And that's what Dr. Leon Alkalai is going to tell us. Leon is actually an alumnus of JPL, of Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So this is a talk given by an alumni of an organization to the alumni of Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. And it's not the first time that Leon has been with us. Leon started when he was still in JPL, and then we witnessed him make the switch. So Leon was in JPL for 32 years. And then he was credited with several important things. One of them is the Grail mission to the moon in 2007 and the InSight lander on Mars in 2012. For both things, he received awards from NASA. So Leon is a very accomplished person in the space endeavors. And I don't know if his machine is still working on Mars, but I would doubt it. I think it finished its mission.
It finished.
It finished its mission. And then Leon, at a certain point, when he achieved all this work and accolades, decided to retire and develop an entity called Mandala Space Ventures, which is a bunch of companies that all aim at one thing, the development of emerging space economy. I will not go to any one of them because I wouldn't even know. But the subject of today is recent development and the outlook for the emerging space economy. So we are humbled to listen to you, Leon, about your most recent endeavors.
Thank you. Thank you, Ishtar, and thank you
much.
Thank you, friends. Good to see my friends, David Rockblatt and Amnon and everybody else and new friends. Thank you for inviting me. So I'm going to share my screen and let me know if you can see this.
Perfect.
Okay.
Very well.
Wonderful. So I'm going to try and make this very much entertaining and informative. So hopefully you will not be bored. Thank you again for inviting me to this alumni group. What you see here is something interesting. If you don't know what a mandala or mandala is, I kind of stumbled on this. It's a longer story, but I'll keep it very short. I stumbled upon this term or this figure when I looked up what is a mandala. It is really a geometric form, a figure, basically a circular, regular figure that represents the universe in the Hindu and the Buddhist symbolism. I did not know that until I started just researching different names, and I found out that a mandala in India, and there are many mandalas being drawn and depicted at various temples, Hindu, Buddhist temples, and so on. And then I found online this picture here, what is called a GIF. If you just take the sun, put it in the middle, and you connect the Earth and Venus with a line, like a figurative, fictional line, and you plot that line as they rotate around the sun, you get a mandala or a mandala in our solar system. So I thought that was a very exciting and nice kind of symbolism representing the universe. Mandalas occur in space virtually, and I just thought it was a good name to pick for a space company, Mandala Space Ventures. There's more to that story, more of a personal nature, but I will just leave it at that. Now, a little bit about me. Those who don't know me, I'll just keep it to one page. Iskar was very good at listing some of my accomplishments that I'm very proud of. I got my PhD at UCLA in 1989. Going back a little bit before that, I was born in Yugoslavia, today a country that doesn't exist anymore, but I was born in Serbia. And let me just do this. In Belgrade, I come from a family of mother Holocaust survivor. She survived the Bergen-Belsen in Germany, and she was from Croatia. My father was a partisan in the Second World War. He fought with Tito. He was from Bosnia, and I was born in Belgrade, today Serbia. We actually lived somewhat of a nomadic life. I grew up in New York, lived in London, Africa. My family moved around, and I settled in Belgrade, finished my first degree at Belgrade University in electrical engineering. And then I went to UCLA, got my PhD in 1989, and was recruited by JPL, by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and then spent a good 32 years working a number of different technologies, missions, and I'm most proud of the missions to the moon and Mars called Grail and Insight, which indeed for each one of those I received the Distinguished Individual Achievement Medal from NASA. I was elected a fellow of JPL. I'm also a member of the International Academy of Astronautics. That's just me. Many people, when they look at my career, especially as they relate to maybe their children or grandchildren in the next generation, I often get asked the question, what books inspired me? Or who were the figures in my early development who inspired me to go maybe down this path that I have of science and technology? And I'm very happy to share that there were two figures, two authors that really made a huge impact on my life and education. On the left, you see very well-known author Isaac Asimov. Many, many books. When I was about 17 or 16, 17, I became a fanatic follower of Isaac Asimov. He wrote the trilogy that is now, I think, a streaming series on TV. I don't know which platform. But he wrote I, Robot and just many, many books that have turned out to be Hollywood hits with just famous actors and so on. But he was so special to me because he was not really a scientist, even though he started off as such, but he really was more of a writer, a science fiction writer. But in addition to that, he was an extremely good writer of popular science. That means he would be able to understand some of the scientific discoveries by Albert Einstein or all the other luminaries, and then he would be able to write a book that explains it so that somebody at my age of, let's say, 15 or 16 years old would actually understand a lot about that scientific discovery. So I was just an avid reader of anything Asimov would write, science fiction or popular science. And that really built in me a huge, I would say, desire and to learn, and a huge curiosity to learn, which was, I think, essential for anybody to kind of move into the realm of science and technology and learning. The other person here on the right-hand side is Arthur C. Clarke, the famous book Odyssey 2001. And that is also a monumental, I think, piece of work, also became a famous movie as well. Those two authors and books really changed me as a young person, even before, while a teenager, 15 to 17, I would say those were the years where I really went into science fiction. And fast forward many years later, 50 years later, 40 years later, whatever, here I am in the house of Dan Golden. Dan Golden, here standing to my left, was the longest serving NASA administrator. He now lives in Malibu and is still a very close friend. We're in his home. To his left is Charles Elachi, a dear friend of mine, and he was the JPL director for 15 years, now a professor emeritus at Caltech. And to my right immediately is David Dreyer. Some of you may know the name. He was in Congress for over 30 years, congressman from the district that represented Pasadena, JPL, Caltech, and so on. And to his right is a good friend, Brad Schwartz. He is a lawyer, investor, serial entrepreneur in La Cañada. And I presented to my friends the vision of what we're doing today, Mandala Space Ventures. And here we are huddled in a memorable picture in Dan Golden's home. And Dan Golden, who is today, I think, 83 years old, is so vital and so involved. I speak to him almost every day. Almost every day I speak to Dan Golden. He is still very, very active. Now he's also retired, working also for financial institutions and helping me in my venture. So I'm going to go through a few slides. They really, really will not be too detailed, very, very high level. One thing that everybody should take away from this is that the world of commercial space, the industry of space is rapidly growing. It's not just Elon Musk, and it's not just Jeff Bezos or Richard Branson, the billionaires. There is a whole ecosystem of companies, not only large, but many thousands of companies that are emerging at the startup stage. That means companies or people from universities, from JPL, from legacy companies, creating their own startup companies and going into the space business. And it is just growing very fast. And I'm very delighted to be in this new world. So I left JPL 3.5 years ago, and now I'm in this venture capitalist business. And I'll tell you more about the work I'm doing. I'm mainly in the business of creating new companies in this emerging space business. But the market size of the space business is just huge. I will stay a little bit on this slide 6, which I think is, one can spend a whole lecture on this slide. But when I'm asked what are the big things that space brings to humanity, why should we care about space, what's going on, and so on, let's look at the top row of pictures here. We all care, and we should care about climate change, what's happening to our planet, what are the anthropomorphic impacts of humanity on the planet, and how do we mitigate that? Well, monitoring climate change and mitigating climate change impact is only possible from space. Space observation platforms allow us to image the planet every day, image it over time, track changes on the planet, whether it's the atmosphere, whether it's the earth or the oceans, precipitation. And so if we want to know more about our planet, how it is changing, we have to do Earth observation from space. That's the only vantage point that allows us to have a holistic view of climate change. And there are many satellites going up into space every year for that purpose. Earth observation, NASA, NOAA, many other satellites are out there and observing our planet on a daily basis, continuously. The next picture to the right is what I call freedom to operate. Space is getting congested, no doubt about it. And then you have bad things happening in space. Not only Russia and China, but the United States has demonstrated that it can ballistically hit a defunct satellite and demonstrate that it can be that space can be weaponized, and that produces a lot of additional debris into space, and that is a problem. There is a lot of junk in space that needs to be mitigated. It needs to be collected. It needs to be tracked. Without that, There is no freedom to operate because some of these debris elements are going to impact the space station or the other satellites, and we just need to take care of space and Earth orbit. The next picture to the right is one that is dear to my heart because I spent a good 20 years at JPL studying lunar missions to the moon. The lunar economy is upon us. That means NASA has something called the Artemis program, with 23 countries signed up to join NASA in bringing back humans to the moon, this time to stay, this time to build habitats, to build research stations, to do exploration, mining, resource utilization, and much, much more. This is not science fiction. This is going to happen, or the beginning of it will happen this decade. By the end of this decade, there will be humans, astronauts landing on the moon. NASA has already selected the group of astronauts, including a Canadian, who will join a group of 4 that will go and be the first astronaut, not the first, but the new astronaut corps that will go to the moon. And there's so much more going on in terms of infrastructure and communications and energy, resource utilization. All of that is happening right now, and there are many, many companies positioning themselves to develop the lunar economy. The next picture to the right is what I call space resources. There are a number of companies out there that are still excited and eager to go to an asteroid, mine the asteroid, and bring those resources back to Earth. Sooner or later, the Earth will run out of resources, rare earth metals, many, many other resources. And yet our solar system, the moon and asteroids, are full of resources that the humanity on Earth can eventually use. So this is not something that is going to happen in large amounts in the next decade or two, but it's certainly something we should pay attention to and worry about, because sooner or later, Earth will need more resources, and we need to have the technology and the means to bring those resources to Earth. On the lower half of this slide, you see some of the key drivers. What is driving this space economy? Well, you've heard of SpaceX, perhaps you've heard of Blue Origin. There's most probably at least another 50 or 60 aerospace launch vehicle companies under development right now. Many of them are in Southern California. Many of them are in El Segundo or Long Beach. Those are 2 hubs that have emerged as areas where launch vehicles are being built, integrated. You have Relativity Space, you have Rocket Labs, you have ABL, you have Impulse, you have many, many companies all emerging in the Long Beach to El Segundo corridor, all focused on space and focused on launch vehicles, including SpaceX in Hawthorne. So launch vehicle cost is coming down significantly. That means it costs less to put infrastructure into space. And that's just opening up the market for customers, for developers, investors alike. The next topic down there is global communications. We all understand we're using global communications right now. I'm actually sitting in Seattle in a hotel room. Who knows where you all are, but you could be anywhere in the world and you would not sense the latency, the delay between us around the globe. It is all because of satellite communications that are focused on providing broadband communications to the world. And if you're in some area where there is no satellite coverage, you can buy a Starlink platform, and for a reasonably small amount of money, you can get internet services anywhere around the world. So global communications is here, it's growing, and there's more to come. Third item is national security strategy for space. it has become very, very evident that space is not just an economy, it's not just a destination or a tourist attraction, it is a strategic high ground. There's almost no effort today going on in the world of national defense that does not involve space. And it will continue to grow in importance for national security, whether it's communications, whether it's intelligence, signal, what is called SIGINT, signal intelligence. All of that is gathered from space, and it's just becoming more and more important. And the last topic I have here, which is since I've started giving this talk, has become even more prominent, and that is the emergence of AI. AI has now matured to the point of we know about ChatGPT and other AI platforms. But I think the combination of AI and robotics is really the powerful combination of human machine interfaces that goes back to Isaac Asimov. He predicted and he wrote about extensively many, many years ago. I want to bring to your attention the fact that in LA, if you are in Los Angeles or in the vicinity, we are uniquely located in the world's largest space hub. If I look at San Diego to Santa Barbara, Long Beach to Mojave, it is the largest concentration of space economy anywhere in the world. We may not appreciate it, but the space industry in Southern California is larger than Hollywood. It's larger than entertainment industry in Los Angeles. I put up a number here from the California Economic Development Agency that in last year, the economic impact of aerospace and defense in California was over $180 billion. That's money spent in California on aerospace in defense, salaries, procurements, development, infrastructure, real estate, you name it. And most of it, 80% of it, is in Southern California historically, and more so in the last decade or so. You can look at all these names here. Besides the usual Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Aerospace, there's the U.S. government, the Space Missiles Command, and many, many other branches of the DoD, the Air Force, the Space Force, and so on. And then you have places like Caltech, JPL, USC, UCLA, UC Long Beach, and many, many other universities that are providing the talent pool for this whole industry. So when I left JPL 3.5 years ago, I left with a mission. I wanted to create a facility, which I've done in Pasadena. This is, if anybody knows where the Pasadena Playhouse building is, I'm right in that building of the Pasadena Playhouse. And this is a small, I would call it an incubator, where you can come, you can set up a company. We only deal with space. And then together, our studio, with your talent and your vision, we can invest, we can build a startup company that is focused on space. I pride myself in this kind of list of partnerships that we've developed. California Institute of Technology is a huge engineering powerhouse. It manages and owns JPL. JPL has a prime contract with NASA, which is worth $30 billion. $3 billion a year for 10 years is what Caltech gets from NASA to manage JPL year after year. And it's all space focused. We also work very closely with the Aerospace Corporation, with USC, UCLA. We have an agreement signed with the US Air Force, Space Force, Air Force Research Lab. This is really the primary interfaces that I've developed for Mandala Space Ventures to basically cover as much of the IP and the talent pool that is coming out of universities, academia, and national laboratories in California. Our reach goes beyond California, but this is certainly locally. I'll spend only a few minutes on, this is complicated, it seems complicated, but I just want to say a few things if somebody here is interested in how we do our business. So Mandela Space Ventures here on top is the holding company. And my company, Mandela Space Ventures, is divided into two branches. There is a venture studio where companies get created, and there is a venture fund where companies get investments from. So there are two branches. Here we have people, we have talent, we create new companies, we go through processes, we do research. So this is kind of the human capital intensive process where we create new ideas and new companies. On the right-hand side is more of an investment vehicle where we raise capital from investors. You all could be limited partners in this venture fund, and then we use that money in a very controlled way to invest either in companies coming out of the studio, but we also invest in other companies outside the studio. My first fund is called Explorer One, which was the first US mission, name of the first US mission into space. And my second fund, about to be created, it's called Mariner 2, which is another US mission, first interplanetary mission to Venus called Mariner 2. And these are some of the companies we've invested in from the fund, and these are some of the companies created in the studio. So again, two branches, studio where we incubate and provide services, fund where we invest. I'm going to share with you a little bit some of the activities on our studio side. Our studio has become rather popular internationally. I'm very proud that early this year, the Canadian government approached us and said, we'd love for you to accelerate or incubate or advise the Canadian space ecosystem. We'll pay you, and we want you to provide an educational program for the startup companies in Canada. So we did that. They paid us. We incubated about 9 companies from Canada earlier this year. And then once we started doing that, the UK Space Agency reached out to me and said, we love what you did for Canada. Can you do this for the UK Space Agency? So we did that. We're now on contract with the UK Space Agency. We're halfway through the program to bring our education, our network, our investment into the UK market. And I didn't yet update this slide, but only last week we signed, or we're about to sign, an agreement with 2 other countries. There'll be 2 more bubbles here, Australia and New Zealand. So Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand. And we're planning to launch our own incubator or accelerator program next year, focused only on the US. So Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and next year we will do one dedicated to the US market. I don't need to go into any of these details, but these are some of the companies that we've been incubating. This is a software company. This is a hypersonic company. This is an engine company. So this is what we do in our studio. I'm very proud of this recent company, Sophia Space, which is looking to put data centers into space. Some of you may know what data centers are. These are big, big, big investments on Earth that store all yours and my data and do processing of all that data on Earth. But they are running into a huge problem with energy. The amount of energy it takes to power these data centers is just growing exponentially. So we created a company, Sophia Space, that really is showing that these data centers could be powered by the sun, and these data centers could be put in space. I think it's a huge, huge idea, and we're very excited about that. In our venture side, we have already built a fund, Explorer One, that was launched in 2021. We're now building our second fund in 2025. This was the Mariner 2, and we're planning to create a third fund in a few years. And these are not large amounts of money. This first fund was $16 million, but it was going both into our studio and outside. Our new fund is going to be about $10 million, but it's all focused on internal to the studio. all focused on creating new companies from our studio. These are some of the companies we've already invested in from our first fund. I'm actually here in Seattle to visit this company, Radian Aerospace, which is building a space plane, an airplane that can take off from from the ground and go all the way to space and back. Never been done before. And this is my team in the studio. I'm very proud, a very talented team. This is my board. Again, Brad Schwartz, Brian Sullivan, Stephen Kay. They come with a lot of business expertise. And this is my advisory board. Dan Golden, I shared with you earlier, Charles Elachi. Peter Lowy, some of you may know, the Lowy family group used to own the Westfield shopping malls. They are an Australian family, but Peter Lowy lives in LA. He's invested in my studio. And I'm very proud that Dana Shell Smith, who used to be the US ambassador to Qatar under Obama, is also on my advisory board as well. And the way I'm structured as a company is that I have a small studio team, and then I brought in a large group of advisors, most of them from JPL, who are just world experts on many, many aspects of space. Unmatched expertise backed by over 350 years of collective spaceflight experience. No other studio, accelerator, venture studio has our expertise in space. I'm also very proud of the relationships we've developed in the VC, private equity banking system, professional services, US government and international relationships, as well as CEOs of startup companies. Our network is growing every day, and that's part of the value proposition that our studio brings. So I hope I was able to share with you a little bit that space is exciting. There's lots of stuff going on. It is a world that I would encourage your children and grandchildren to go into, because it is exciting and it's expanding, going to the moon and beyond, and good things can come out of this new world. Thank you. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Leon.
That's pretty
Fascinating.
exciting.
Questions?
Yes, please. Any questions?
Yes.
This-
The
I
one
know,
thing
I'm
that's got
confident.
me, the one thing that has me concerned is
Yeah.
the fact I just have a feeling like we've placed all of our eggs in one basket. We have so much control by these satellites, and to put a satellite to sleep, you know, in other words, espionage or knock it out, it seems to be relatively easy, whether they use impulse, magnetic impulse, whatever they do. And that could bring down electrical, water, everything that's controlled is really going through these satellites. A mouse always has two ways in and out of the little subterranean tunnel they grow. What do we have? It's all out. Every chicken's in the same basket.
Oh, absolutely not. Alan,
Oh,
let me.
Well, that's what I don't know. I'm looking for somebody like you to explain it to me.
Absolutely not. If I were to ask you to guess, how many satellites do you think Starlink has?
Oh, thousands.
They're approved for 40,000.
Okay.
Just one company.
Right.
40,000 satellites. That's, I don't know how many mice that is, but that's 40,000 satellites. Now, they're not the only ones. They're one of a dozen providers. There's OneWeb, there's Kuiper, there's just dozens and dozens of communication satellites, and that's just on communications. So you take out 1,000 Starlink satellites by some magic, I don't know what will take them out, you've got 39,000. Now, there is a possibility of a common threat, and that common threat is not China, it's not Russia, it's not what you may think. It could be the sun. It could be something that is environmentally, you know, catastrophic. You know, the sun has a tremendous output of coronal mass ejection and so on. Now, luckily, there's another field in space called space weather, There are satellites that just track the activities on the sun. They track all these things, what happens to the Earth atmosphere, the ionosphere, and so on. But I would argue that in terms of resilience, space is far more resilient than Earth. We are much, much more vulnerable on Earth than we are in space. It's not without problems like debris. I mentioned earlier that the debris is a problem. There is something called a Kessler phenomenon, that if you were to take out a certain number of these satellites and they all created debris, that they would be like a chain reaction, causing more damage and more damage and more damage and more damage. So there are cataclysmic kind of concepts out there. And that's why there is a huge push internationally to collect this orbital debris, to kind of clean up the space environment. But in terms of resilience, by no means are all the eggs in one basket. It's quite the opposite.
Well, now I feel better.
Leon, let me, Leon, I'm very enthusiastic about your endeavors for many years. My recent contribution would be to convince David Rochblatt to visit with you and maybe join you in the future. I think he can bring with him a lot of ideas and new dimensions.
David is
So,
a dear
but
friend, and I would love
that's
know
my
nothing
first
else.
comment. The second, the issue in space is water. I know that you have a knowledge and opinion about the presence of water in space. Can you just brief
Yes.
us?
Yes, this is another maybe misconception, and something that, you know, anybody who's learned from textbooks maybe 10, 20 years ago would think that, you know, we're so unique that there is no water elsewhere other than on Earth. It's quite the opposite. In recent decade or two, water has been discovered all over the solar system. There's water on Mercury. There's water on Venus. There's plenty of water on the moon. We thought the moon was as dry as can be. There is plenty of water on both the north and the south pole of the moon. And there is also what is called superficial water on the surface of the moon that kind of is breathing. And when the sun hits, it evaporates. When the sun goes down, it collapses. So there's ample water on the moon, on our moon. There's more water on Europa, a moon of Jupiter, than there is on Earth. There's water all over our solar system, and that is a revelation and a discovery that has happened in recent history. And there's even when there's scientists who just study formation of solar systems around other stars, and they found many places where water exists in the primordial ingredients of solar systems. So there is the prevailing theory today is that water was not delivered by cometary impact, but that water existed in the material before the solar system was created. So water exists in our solar system, and there are most probably many other solar systems that have water in abundance.
But the question is if the water is accessible.
Well, is mostly accessible outside of Earth on the moon. That's clearly accessible. And the landers that are going to the moon this year, in December or January, by NASA, there's a mission by a company called Intuitive Machines. They're going to the south pole of the moon, where it is definitive that there is water ice stuck or in the bottom of the craters on the south pole of the moon. So water is everywhere.
Are they going to bring with them drilling equipment that they can reach the water?
Yes, that is the whole idea. There's new missions being designed, and new rovers being designed to what is it? Signs of life. What does it say? You're muted, Alan. You're muted.
I'm on the Griffith Observatory board. This is our newest production 8K resolution in the planetarium, live narration. You will love this. What a piece of
We'll love
work.
it.
Pixar
Yeah.
worked on that with us, and bring the kids, bring the anybody, bring children. You'll
I
love
love
it.
it. Love it, love it, love it. And I talk about this in many, many lectures. And as my friends from JPL would know, there's a whole discipline of what is called ocean worlds, of looking for life on Titan and Europa and many, many Ganymede and so on. So it's a beautiful topic. I'd love to see it, Alan.
Great.
Delighted.
I'm
Thank
going
you.
to tell the board that.
Please,
Okay.
please.
Esphir wants to say something.
Yes, Esther, please. You're muted, Esther. You're muted. Somebody should unmute Esther.
Somebody knows how to read lips?
And to unmute.
Now.
I'm so impressed. It's amazing what you have done in the last 5 years. Anyway, I also want to just, you mentioned very briefly the cost of electricity and the impact of AI that will have. Can you sort of expound on that?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Esther. That's
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite topics of recent. So
Yeah.
there are many, many reports recently. This is all in the last, I would say, 2 years, with the kind of emergence and explosion of AI, that data centers cannot be built fast enough. I just spoke to my friends at Microsoft. Microsoft and a financial institution that you may have heard of called BlackRock,
Yeah.
they have signed $100 billion investment plan. $100 billion. 100.
A lot of money.
It boggles my mind. $100 billion to invest in energy for data centers. And I spoke to my friends. They're investing in nuclear fusion, nuclear fission. And when I hear that, I get upset. And Alan, you should get upset if you're worried about our planet. Microsoft is planning to build nuclear fusion power plants next to data centers.
Right.
So we in LA would have nuclear plants just for the sake of powering energy for AI and our own data. I get upset about it because I know we can do that in space with solar energy. So it can be done. It protects the planet. It saves the planet. It doesn't bring a disaster possibly to the planet. And it is sustainable. It is free. Energy from the sun is free. And the technology is making it so that it can be done. It's just so incredulous that people get buying it, frankly. They'd rather invest in nuclear fusion, which doesn't exist. And rather than, so I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to build this company called Sophia to demonstrate that we can do data centers in space. So thank you, Esther, for that question.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not.
Yeah,
Yes.
Leon, first of all, good to see
Leon,
you again. Good to see you. It's been a long time. I applaud you for all these exciting projects. It's reminiscent of my days at JPL working on the Voyager spacecraft. That's before you were born in 1970.
Right.
Yeah. So I have a question regarding the space resources that you mentioned.
Yes.
Obviously, we on Earth need a lot of resources, and our resources here are obviously limited.
Yes.
How are you going to carry, I should use the word schlep, all the resources from space? We are talking about hundreds of thousands of tons
Yes.
of minerals and everything, because the payload on spacecraft carrying them back is pretty expensive, and not everything is possible.
Yes. So I would say today there's about 4 different companies that are today first demonstrating that you can go and rendezvous with an asteroid, sample and do some in situ mining, in situ kind of gathering, and then return those to Earth. That's kind of the first step. The next step would be to actually return asteroids to the Earth orbit that are smaller. You will not be able to return the size of a Texas or something, but
Right.
you could return asteroids that are of the size of a kilometer. That could be with the right propulsion. It could be slowly, but it could be brought into the Earth reach. So that would be two options. The third option would have to be that you actually do the in situ mining, and then you transport those minerals back to the Earth or the moon. But I think eventually it will happen. You know, when you look at the Starship from SpaceX, I believe any day now it should be launching its fourth attempt. That is able to launch into lower Earth orbit 100 metric ton of payload. So with a few launches like that into low Earth orbit, you can actually assemble a pretty powerful spaceship. That's what Elon Musk is planning to do for Mars, and send that to an asteroid, do the mining, and then take one of them to bring back minerals back to Earth. It's all possible. It's just a matter of time and money, but it's certainly possible.
And so
Can you give us
because of the large quantities of resources that are needed here on Earth, do you think that project or that idea would be very cost effective, that will make it worthwhile?
I think it will. It's not clear when it will be cost effective, and it all depends on which resources. We are already running out of rare earth metals, right? For many applications.
Right.
My gut feeling is that before we start really mining asteroids in any large amount, that we will more likely find resources, including rare earth metals, on the moon. So for me, the moon is more of a near-term target than asteroids.
Yeah.
Leon,
Thank you.
can you name some of the metals that will be worthwhile bringing from space?
Yes, so there's a whole class of rare earth metals which are essential for microelectronics to work, but there's also lots of resources that are assumed to exist on the moon, including isotope helium-3, which is used in nuclear reactors. But then the other real possibility with the moon, because we know the moon has lots of water and it has lots of oxyls combined with minerals like ferroxide, so FeOH. So one can separate oxygen and hydrogen on the moon, and those are the two elements you need to create propulsion. Oxygen as an oxidizer and hydrogen as a propellant. So developing a source of energy on the moon to reach to Mars and other asteroids is a very viable product from the moon. So it doesn't have to be just resources bringing back to Earth. It could be resources to be used on the moon and resources to be used from the moon to go to other destinations.
I have a question concerning the politics of space. I mean, who eventually is going to claim? The Chinese are planning of landing a person there. They probably will want a piece of the real estate. It's probably going to be a problem in the future. Who is going to own what? Any comment on that?
Yes. So, you know, it's interesting. There are plenty of laws and plenty of regulations and plenty of conferences, but there's not much progress. And so what that means is that when China lands on the moon and they plant a flag, they basically own whatever they want. And the same goes for the US. There is no sovereignty on the moon. There is no sovereignty in space. In fact, in space, the space station circles the Earth every 90 minutes. So, you know, nobody can say, oh, it's above the US, it belongs to us. The way the laws work right now is the sovereignty is tied to the launch location. So if the US launches a satellite in space, it owns. That's like an embassy. It's US property, US territory. The US has also declared all the Apollo sites on the moon as US property. So nobody, according to the US, is allowed to go and take something from the Apollo landing hardware, which is still there. Now, who will enforce it? Who will legislate it? Who owns it? None of that has been settled. People do worry about it. People also worry very much about the weaponization of space. There is a treaty dating back to 1969 for a United Nations treaty for the peaceful utilization of space. And people still refer to those treaties from the 60s that were designed to prevent the weaponization of space. But all of those things are goodwill gestures. There is no real authority at this point or sovereignty. So your point is a very good one. It is really more the law of the strongest at this point. So there is no real, legal authority on the moon, for example.
So Leon, you can put the sign mandala on the moon and it will be yours forever.
There has been a major advancement in law on this topic, maybe I would say about a decade ago or so. It was purely from a lobbying group that was looking to bring back minerals, Amnon, to your point, from an asteroid. This company was called Planetary Resources, and they, if you remember, Doe and Gerhardt and all those politicians who were in Congress 20 years ago, they actually passed a law that if a private company brings back resources from an asteroid to Earth, they get to keep it. That was a major regulatory step forward because if you brought samples from the moon or brought samples from an asteroid, there was no guarantee that the US government won't say, hey, that doesn't belong to you, that belongs to the government. And so that law was changed in the US that a private company, if they bring resources back to Earth from an extraterrestrial source, that company gets to keep it.
Leon, is that all under real estate and space?
Real estate in space is happening. Just as a topic, the NASA International Space Station is going to retire by 2030. NASA has declared that. It's been long in the making. So NASA has decided to commercialize the International Space Station. And NASA is today funding at least 3 companies to build their own private space stations. This is a huge development, and that would de facto mean real estate in space. That private company would then lease real estate to NASA and the US government.
So Hilton's going to build a hotel.
Hilton is already a partner in one of these companies. Hilton is one of the first to build a hotel in space. That is no joke. And
I'm making a joke. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
Leon, are you selling tickets already?
There are tickets being sold for tourism to the moon, tourism to the space station. It is happening.
Wow.
I have a question, Leon,
Yes,
about medicine in space.
yeah.
So when we go to Mars, for example, 7 months one way or maybe 6 months, and then back, and the time that we stay over there to take care of the astronauts, in the time being, doing a blood test, we talk about Elizabeth, the one drop of blood to do, and on the travel, are there any work that is urgently needed in this field before we embark on sending people to Mars that hasn't been dealt yet with?
Yes, David, your question is an excellent question. In my new job, in my new business, I do see every year a few companies that are emerging in the field of space medicine, healthcare for astronauts, healthcare for habitats on the moon, Mars, and so on. But they are very, very hard to fund. That means the venture capital is not throwing money at them. And that is because they still don't see the market. You know, on Earth, you have, I don't know, 7 billion people. Everywhere you go, everybody has healthcare. The number of people going into space, whether it's up to the space station or to the moon and so on, is still a trickle. It's still a small market. So, so it's kind of the short answer is there are plenty of needs, but there's not at this point. Funding is still coming from only the government. The investors are not seeing the big potential of spending money specifically on space medicine. That's kind of what I'm seeing. And, you know, investors want to see return on their investment. You know, they want to put in $1 million and get 10 million, you know, and just like they invested in Apple or something like that. And that kind of turnaround is still not present in space medicine.
Leon,
Okay, so maybe I would like to then suggest a bridge, perhaps. We need to think about it more. Come up with methods that also have earthly applications.
That's right. And that's kind of what.
And they have an easier spring off towards space.
Absolutely, 100% right. In fact, there's this Canadian company that is looking at telemedicine and looking at providing medicine to remote locations in Canada. And they're looking at that as an analog for space medicine. And they're doing that. They're applying AI. They're doing remote sensing and instruments. And yeah, I actually have that is exactly the right way to do it.
Okay, good.
Leon, I see that.
Leon, I have a question.
Who is this?
It's Sarit. I'm here in the photo. Don't have my makeup. So the question I have, I think it's a fascinating field, and especially I'm inspired by everything, your presentation. And I was just wish how many young people go into this field. I was interested to know if any of your sons are into this or
not my sons. No, I have 3 boys, and I actually steered them away from going to JPL and NASA, and only because I wanted them to create their own path forward, and they're all doing great. But I want you all to know that as of this year is my second year that I'm volunteering as what is called a scholar in residence at the Milken Community High School.
Oh,
So
wow.
I every month on a Friday morning, I spend 3 hours mentoring high school kids from 7th grade to, you know, seniors, and about space, but not only space, just trying to inspire them to go into science and technology. So I believe in inspiring and teaching the young generation to just be, I would say, they don't have to go into space, but just be curious, just be enjoying to learn. To me, that's what it takes to really make a difference, is to stimulate that element of curiosity and the element, you know, I'll share with you what my father always taught me. And he said, when you learn for yourself, not for the grade or for the teacher. Feel it as a reflexive emotion. When you learn, you are you're doing it for yourself, not for anybody else. And I've carried that message throughout my life.
Leo, get them up to see that movie at the Griffith. They will love it. If that's what you're doing, they will love it. I'm telling you, they will love it.
I'll reach out to you. I'll reach out to you.
Okay. Anyway, I think that we got to the limit of our current knowledge, and the rest is speculations. So we let Leon continue and develop, and we'll come, maybe we'll reunite in 1 year and see what has elapsed in 1 year. So with this note that everybody was satisfied, I would like to thank you, Leon, for sharing the knowledge and the time with us, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you so much. Nice to see you all.
Leon.
Thank you, Leon.
Your
Was
sons
fascinating. Thank you.
You'll hear from David, don't worry.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.